Good morning. Good morning. I'm outside today. It's really beautiful and nice. And the sun is, I'm facing behind the sun. They say when you take a video, light should be in front of you. But I decided that nah, I didn't want to face the sun. But anyways, thank you so much for showing up today. It's Real and Raw with Thembi. And I just want to answer some questions which people have been asking me. So the first questions come from Washington Mohale. Good day, beautiful people. How does the concept of buying property with no money work? That's Washington Mohale, and I'm going to answer this today. So Washington, the no money down or buying property with no money works in different ways. So I'm going to go through the different strategies today. The first one is the joint venture strategy, where you get people with money and they put up the money and you get the property, you manage the property, and you share 50-50. That's the first and simple concept. The second one is what I call seller financing, or you can say agreements for sale depending on where you are. In this case, you get somebody with a property. They want to get rid of the property, maybe because they are moving out of province, or maybe they lost a job and they can't pay, they can't afford to have the property, and they don't have much equity in it. So you take over the property, and when you take over that property, they Oh, sorry. Yeah. When you take over that property, you take it over with no money and you'll pay them after a certain number of years. So, for example, if they've got a contract, a bank contract with which says your mortgage expires in 2 years, you take over that property for 2 years. You don't come up with anything up front, and after 2 years, you just pay them their money, and that's it. Isn't it beautiful? Like, look at that sun. Like, it's so beautiful. So you can do these things. Going back, you can do these things with no money. That is the second concept. The other concept, which is it's wholesaling. Basically, with wholesaling, you find a good deal. You're more like an agent. You find a good deal where you can say, let's say the property is worth 300,000. This is just an example. And you find a good deal which you can pay 254, and then you try to get somebody who can buy that property for 280, still under market, and you have that 30,000 gap. And so you're in between, you're the go between person. You find a buyer and you find a seller. So a seller who sells for a little more, little less, and a buyer who can buy for a little more. So you are making 30,000 spread. The property is worth 300, so you're making 30,000 spread and still giving somebody a discount. You are not really buying a property in that case, but you are getting the gap. Like, you are getting into the gap. You're the middleman and you're making that 30 grand. And I interviewed somebody yesterday who's doing wholesaling, and he makes 1 million a year doing just wholesaling, doesn't even own the property, just goes in between those people. So that's basically the three concepts which I use. There's also the rent to own. With rent to own, you renting to buy a property. So for example, I have a property which I'm selling, let's say for 200,000, and you want to get into the property. Maybe you don't have enough down payment, or maybe you do have down payment, but it's not enough to take you to the bank. So what I can do is I can say, you know what? I'm going to sell this property to you in 2 years for 220. I put a little bit of appreciation on my side. However, you have to sign a contract and say you're going to buy this property for 220 in 2 years. So when you do that, I just want to make sure the sun is not distracting people. Maybe I'll just move like that. Oh, the rays are in front of me. How beautiful is that? Anyways, let's just go back. Okay, so when you do that, when you take 200,000 property and you put it for 220, and this is me doing it, and I can give it to you with no money down, such that by the end of the term, or by the end of 2 years, I am taking some of the money. Say your rent was supposed to be 1,000, I'll charge you 1,500. That 500, I'm taking it and putting it towards the down payment. After 2 years, you've got that big chunk of money which you could just use as a down payment. And so I'm doing that for you, and then you can just buy the property for 220. That's how the rent to own works. And so those are the strategies, just in a nutshell, those are the strategies which you could use to buy real estate with no money. So if you're looking at buying real estate with no money, the first thing I always encourage my students is to start going. But what I find, most people are scared to ask. people are scared to ask. Like, you'll be surprised what you can get just by asking. Just by asking. You have to ask. I'll tell you something, a story recently. I'm doing this summit, all of which I've been sharing. It's coming out September 11, and I'm interviewing global aspects, like real estate aspects who are rocking it out there. Multimillionaires, no, but all of them have at least seven-figure digits. Um, and so I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna decide who I want in my interview. And I wrote a list of the people I wanted. And I just emailed them and said, hey, would you like to be in my interview? Thank you, Prince, for the like. I really appreciate that. Would you like to be in my interview? And you'll be surprised how many yeses I got. And I remember sharing this with a friend and saying, oh, I'm going to be interviewing. I want to have blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah in my interview series. And one of them was the Kiyosakis, if you know Robert Kiyosaki and Kim Kiyosaki. I said, I want to have the Kim Kiyosaki in my interview series. And she said, wow, how are you gonna get that? I was like, I don't know, I'll just try. I'll just keep asking and asking and asking. And I have been communicating with Kim Kiyosaki, believe it or not. And is she gonna be in my interview? I don't know yet. She's still checking her schedule, but that's the power of asking. Like, if I had not asked, I wouldn't have known how to even get in touch with her secretary or whoever answers her emails. And that's what happens when you ask. When you ask, you just open doors for yourself. So that's the thing about, that's the actually the power of investing in real estate, and actually the secret to being successful in real estate. In any deal you do, you just have to ask. People are so scared to ask, and that's what I find in most of my students. They don't even know how to ask, or even how to approach someone and say, hey, can I buy your property? You just have to ask people. I remember a property which I got. It was a land, a 10-acre land property which I made an offer on, and all I had to do was to ask. I asked the guy, I said, would you be willing to carry a mortgage? That's all I did. And he said, oh yeah, I will. Simple as that. You just have to ask. So don't be afraid to ask. And one of my former employees actually asked. She says, he actually sent me an email and said, I would like to work for you. And at that time, I was already looking for somebody. I was like, okay, fine. That's it. You just have to ask. Don't be afraid to ask. And that's what I see in real estate. To be successful, you have to ask. I see that a lot of my students are afraid to ask. I don't know why you'll be afraid. The worst which can happen is a no. A no is not going to kill you. Nobody will kill you just because you asked. No. So just always be willing to ask. That's my advice for today. Always be willing to ask. So having said that, I hope that answered your question, Washington, and I hope that was really helpful to you today. I'm going to say, I think somebody also asked me a question. I just have to go and find it. If you can give me a second here. Somebody asked me a question. Actually, it wasn't a question. It was a suggestion from Simba. Simba said, and I'm going to read this to you. Thank you, Simba, for that pointer. Okay. He said, Simba Chihono, he said, I am a real estate agent based in South Africa, Johannesburg, and I really wanted to share information on the South African market to people out there. The market is currently good to buy, and the banks give foreigners, if you're a foreigner, 50% board. And so if you're interested, just get in touch. Well, thank you for sharing that information, Simba. Yes, if you're a foreigner and looking to invest in South Africa, it's 50%. You do have to invest with numbers, though. Don't just invest just because you got something with 50% down or 20% down or 0% down. I always tell this to my students, like, if the numbers don't work, don't even look at a property. So how do you know the numbers work? Just a simple formula. If it can pay your mortgage, if it can pay your taxes, it can pay your insurance cost. And when I say it, I mean the income which you're getting from your renter. If it can pay that and maybe leave you with a little bit of cash, the numbers work. Don't buy a property thinking you're going to come out of pocket, because I can tell you right now, you can come out of pocket for one property, but when there's two, three, four, five, it gets bad. It really gets hard. How do I know that? How do I know that? Because I've been there. I've been there. So buy based on the fundamentals, like buy based on, are the rents going to go up? Is this a good area to invest? And how do you know it's a good area to invest? When there is something going on in that area, like in Johannesburg, when there's an airport being built, or when there's a train station, when there's all those things being built around that area, you know that it's a good area to invest, because people love to live in an area close to a train station. Close to an airport, you can just do an Airbnb, which I always talk about. You can do a lot of things. There's so many people are flying in and out and need a place to stay. So you need to invest in a place close to a university. University students are great. You could do single student housing, and students love to live close to university, where they don't have to get your bus, where they don't have to drive, where they don't have to do anything. So when you invest in an area with fundamentals, invest in an area with those strong fundamentals. Maybe what I'm going to do in my real and raw next week Tuesday, I'm going to go through that in detail, because I feel like people just buy a property just because it's available. They don't look if this property has fundamentals. They don't look if this is a good area to invest in. They just go and buy. You have to look at that. You have to buy with fundamentals. You have to buy in an area which has potential for growth, an area which will give you returns in the long run. So hopefully this was helpful. It's a short live, but I'm sure it was helpful for you. And thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you have a great weekend, and remember to always come from an abundance mindset. Always ask. Thanks for the like, Maya. Thank you so much. You have a great day. Love you all. Mwah.